Now, this was talking about how can we cope in a situation that we are in. But the one thing that usually reflects and shows us the way forward is by taking a look into our past. I think Naga said this earlier as well. He said when you can wake up in the morning and look at the sunrise and feel the sunrise, make a connection with yourself, you're able to do much better in whatever. And literally, that's all you need. So, well, our next session talks about how you can reflect into your past. Today, you look back and you look at yourself when you were younger and you give yourself lessons you need to progress into the future. So, well, it's true when they say that you can't rewrite the past, but you can surely learn from it and write a new future. Who's better than to hear stories from someone who's actually been there and done that? From making huge breakthroughs in the Indian cosmetic market to being a shark. I like the word shark. Shark in the upcoming Indian version of Shark Tank. Our next speaker, Vineeta, has had several lessons to share with budding entrepreneurs. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to request you to tap, 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 clap, 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 do everything that you can from the comfort of your house to welcome Vinita Singh, co-founder and CEO of Sugar Cosmetics. I must say that as a social media influencer, social media user, I can tell you that sugar is all over the place. Vinita is an alum of the IIT Madras and IIM achieved a gold medal for academic excellence and Comrades Ultra Marathon back-to-back medals. So it's time for us to go out there and give the ownership to Vinita Singh, who's going to join us next.
Thank you for the warm introduction, and very excited to be back on this NSRCL 10,000 Women Program platform. I had met some of you entrepreneurs and been quite inspired by your journeys and how you're thinking about building your businesses. And this is probably the busiest quarter of my life because it's, like many of you, peak season for us. But I have managed to make time for this because I care about the mission behind this program. I do feel that women, especially women founders, are going to be the future. The next decade will belong to them, many of you would create very large businesses that I will be very proud of being associated with. And that's why I've made time for this and I'm very excited. So when I was talking to the team, they mentioned that, what would you tell yourself when you were starting on day one? This was about 15 years back when I was 23, when I first started up. I just graduated from IIM Ahmedabad and, decided to build my own company. And I think there would be probably a whole book on what I would tell myself, because I've probably made more mistakes than any entrepreneur, and I've probably had more failures and rejections than any entrepreneur out there. But I will try to keep it to about, 4 top of the mind lessons, which I feel are very specific also to women, because, after meeting hundreds of women entrepreneurs, I feel that, there are some patterns that in the way we approach and think about our businesses. And I just want to specifically talk about them. And so I think I'll start with the lesson one and, my story behind it. And that's something that I would tell my 23-year-old self and my 38-year-old self, because that's the one thing that I have to still keep reminding myself every day, day after day. And that is to be bolder. I do feel that, if only women founders were as bold as some of the male founders out there, we would have probably had more than 100 unicorns built by women founders. And so in my own journey, when I was graduating, I was very clear that I wanted to build like a consumer brand for women. And my first idea was in the whole women's lingerie segment, where I felt back in 2007 that in India, the kind of innovation and quality that brands had to offer was not at par with what was available at the global level. And I started working on the plan, and went to a few investors to raise some capital. And there were like a series of rejections from VCs, because obviously a 23-year-old who has no relevant experience is not somebody you will expect to build a consumer brand in a category like lingerie, which is obviously has like production and branding and things. As a 23-year-old, I'd never worked on. And while a lot of the advice that I got during those rejections was very helpful, and I still carry it with me, I think they set in me this massive fear of failure, where I realized that fundraising for me is always going to be hard, because I'm too young and there aren't too many successful women founders. And which is why I went to the other extreme of saying that I will forget about what I'm excited about, what I really want to build, and what I'm passionate about, and I will create a company which is completely bootstrapped. And at that point, if you didn't have capital, the only way to build a bootstrap company was to build a services company, where every day you're sort of like getting new clients, getting some advance from them, providing a service, and that whole recurring service cycle, which unfortunately wasn't something I was really excited or passionate about. But I felt that that was a safe business that I could start with. So that was probably the first time that I pegged my ambition to what I thought I could accomplish rather than what I really wanted to build. And I've seen this pattern in women entrepreneurs that I mentor over and over, where we always think about saying that, okay, I have been able to build a 40 lakhs company so far. So, my 5-year ambition is going to be to build a 1 crore company, because obviously, like, it took me 5 years to get to 40 lakhs. And, so extrapolating the same, it will take me like X number of years to get to 1 crore. But that's never how it works in business. And I think, the earlier we get that, the bigger our aspirations will be. And if we have very large dreams and we are bolder, then we're able to build much larger businesses. So most businesses are not linear. Most businesses have this exponential trajectory, where if it took you 5 years to get to that 40 lakhs per year number, and then you crack something, you crack a product that has a lot of consumer love, and or you crack an innovation which there are a lot of clients that are excited about, then that's your time to start the acceleration process. So in our journey of building sugar as well as a company, to get to the first 7 to 8 crores of annual revenue number, it took us like almost 6 to 7 years. But then that journey from that 7 to 8 crores to a 300 crore turnover number took us 3 years, right? So the impact of exponential growth is something that is very hard for us to envisage, but it happens. But before that, we have to crack the product market fit. But I think the big mistake that we make is dreaming about companies that are very small, because if we dream about a 10,000 crore company, then we'll definitely eventually in the next 10 to 15 years be able to build a 1,000 crore company. But if we are dreaming about, I meet so many women founders that have like aspiration of building a 10 crore company, and I do feel that that comes in the way of how large we think, how bold our bets are. And so that's my first advice, and that would be my first advice to my 23-year-old self. Be bolder. Don't let the rejections that you get from venture capitalists who have no idea of what your passion and conviction is drive your decision of how big you think your business can be. Don't let that stop you or limit your dreams. Listen to your own inner voice in terms of knowing that what is it that I'm excited about building. Because if you're excited about a problem, you're excited about a category, you will have such deep understanding about that problem and category which nobody else in the room will have, and they will not be able to appreciate it till they are in it like you are, right? So I think you have the answer to what drives you and what excites you the most, and don't let anybody else's rejection turn your direction into a direction where you don't want to go, because a business will take 10, 15, 20 years to build. You might as well have fun doing it. You might as well do something that you really are excited about. So yeah, so that's one. Second would be, keep it simple. I think a lot of times I've seen early stage founders, when you graduate from a good engineering college or you do an MBA, you have this excitement about creating something which is different, right? So you think that, okay, everybody is doing X, but I want to do something Y, which is most differentiated. Now, sometimes in the attempt to differentiate your product or service or offering, what early stage founders do, and what I did as well, is they really complicate the business, right? So the first business we started with before sugar evolved from it was a subscription service called Fabbag, where every month you had to, like, fill a form where you had to give your preferences in terms of like your interests or your skin type, the kind of products you like, etc. And then we would use an algorithm to curate products that were sent to you in a subscription format every month. Now, the reason we started this was that, we thought that, okay, there are so many brands out there, there are so many e-commerce companies out there. Now, how do I do something which is different and the first ever? So we decided to go with the subscription model. But it was so complicated that in a market which is still at a very nascent stage in terms of like the per capita consumption of beauty products in India back then was still like 1/8 of what it was for Singapore or any other international market. So the growth was going to come from this consumption growing as well as e-commerce growing. We, in our attempt to be very differentiated, created a third business model, which was subscription. But it was just so complicated because of the fact that in India you could not bill credit, bill a recurring subscription fee every month. So you have to take it in advance, and then people would do the math around that. Okay, I'm paying in advance for like 3 months, but I don't know which products I will get every month in my subscription bag. So I need a big discount on that. So it put a lot of margin pressure on the business. Net, although we had a lot of early adopters who loved this subscription idea of getting like products that they had no idea what they would get, and it would be a surprise every month. It did not scale beyond the early adopters because there are just so many people who are evolved enough in a market like ours to understand a complicated business model. And I have seen this play out in a lot of early stage businesses, where just the idea of trying to be different makes people go after very complicated models. So if you're, I think two things are very hard for early stage companies. One is creating a category where you are saying that, okay, people are not currently, for instance, using menstrual cups, and I think it's going to be a big opportunity, but you're trying to educate people, which requires a lot of funding and resources, and the market is still small. So I think it is hard for early stage founders to accomplish that. And second is, a very different way of paying, like a subscription. I think it's again very complicated and very difficult for early stage founders to be able to invest enough to build that kind of awareness, right? So try to keep your model and your product as simple as possible and operate in a large enough market. And there, within that, you try to be the most innovative, the fastest, and find those differentiations within that, rather than making your entire business around a very complicated solution to simple problems. So that's my advice number 2, and I've learned it the hard way from our own journey, from building a subscription commerce business to actually building a consumer brand, which is very easy to understand, where you're just saying that, okay, this is the best makeup in India for young women. That's it. As easy to understand as that, right? So that's my second advice. Third would be, again, very, very specific to women founders. And what's worked for us as well is to say no a lot. I feel that a lot of times early stage companies are doing just too many things because they get, like, for instance, in our case, what happened is that when we started building our brand, Sugar, uh, as an early stage brand, you don't have the money to invest in ATL or branding. And I get a lot of people asking me this question, saying that, I'm how do I build my brand with zero budgets, right? I think more than what all you can do at that early stages, what all you don't do. And for us, this was very clear. We were very clear about the fact that we will, for instance, only create like world class products, right? So every single of product of ours has to be at par with the best in the world and not just best in India. Our packaging, there was a lot of thought that went into it, saying that, okay, our products will be black, square, matte, where the logo will pop out on every single unit so that it can stand out both on Instagram, which they call thumb stopping content when they scroll through the feed, and in retail shelves. And outside, we will have this very differentiated artwork which brings out these mosaic patterns of women who represent our consumer, right? So each product had a unique packaging that spoke our design language. And it was very hard to stick to that product after product because a square matte container is very expensive. Having these like designs on every product required a lot of thought and effort going into it, the naming. But these, as a young founder, while you can't invest in a TV ad or you can't invest in putting like a crore in Facebook ads, you can invest in creating that product, because that requires firstly a lot more thought and effort into creating something that's beautiful that a consumer would love to have. And secondly, it's it builds that trust, because the consumer knows that if I shop from Sugar, I will not get a bad quality product. I will always get this consistent packaging. I will get the same branding. I'll get the same design language. I will not have to worry about, like no, getting the product at a 50% discount later, because I think we feel that pricing is another attribute of the brand. So you can't like, have your own brand getting discounted at 40-50% just because, it'll help your sales. So we said no to a lot of things. We said no to, pricing our products cheaper. We said no to discounting our products. We said no to compromising on quality. We said no to compromising on packaging. We said no to doing products that weren't right for young women. Like, there is probably a very large product that a multinational brand sells, but, the core target audience, like a Sindoor, for instance, right? So a lot of the Indian large brands do like 5-7% of their business through Sindoor. Now, Sindoor as a category, we will not launch because, we stand for young millennial women, and we feel that, Sindoor doesn't fit into the vibe that a Sugar product has. So I feel that while you can't figure out what all to spend on in the early stages, if you figure out what all to say no to, you will be able to build a very consistent experience around your product. And even for like, in terms of business streams. So I meet a lot of founders that at very early stages start doing things like, oh, I'm not able to scale my business, so I will start creating private label products for some export retailer, or I will sell in some random country where the market is not growing, but I'm getting some business. I feel that, your focus, your time, and what you're putting your bandwidth in is very important. So if you are at a 40 lakhs revenue and you have a potential to get like a 10 lakh extra by doing something which is irrelevant, like creating a product for somebody else's brand, don't do it. Because, while you get those 10 lakhs and, that cash might be valuable to you, what you're giving up is your precious bandwidth and time. So say no a lot more, because I feel that early stage founders, and me included, get very carried away by like small amounts of business that they're able to get at, which is not a which probably may not be a recurring business, but solves like a short-term cash problem. Of course, there are extreme situations like COVID when a lot of people had to do just to, stay afloat. Barring those instances, I would say no to these tempting opportunities, because, your time is the most precious. And as I talk about time, I have to also mention that, as women, it will not, the fact that in India, we do 6 times more unpaid labor, which is, raising our families, helping in domestic chores, than our male counterparts. So in India, women do 6:1 more unpaid labor. So which is why also I feel that your time as a woman founder is very important, where you put your time, because you will always have like 2-3 key priorities in your life: your family, your business. And for you especially, time is of the essence. So which means that you also have to say no to some opportunities around networking events and things around like that require you to like participate and put in a lot of effort, but you don't see the results coming in for your business because there are a very 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 few meetings, for instance, that have like direct impact on your business. And I do feel that early stage founders spend their time doing a lot of these business plan competitions, awards, things like that, which have zero impact on business but takes away a lot of bandwidth. So as women founders, I do feel that again, guard your time as you guard your money. Like, treat your time with as much value, treat your focus with as much value. Don't do things that will compromise or your focus from what you're building. So that's number 3. And last one, finally, I'll say, one of the mistakes that we made very early on is that we thought that we hated spending on expensive resources early on. And I understand, when you're operating at a sub 1 crore revenue, you are very every rupee matters, and it seems very hard to get somebody on board who would be at your salary which is very high. But pick 1 or 2 critical functions which will determine the success of your business. So if you are in a B2B business, that critical function is business development. You might be the best at your product, but if you don't have somebody who comes in and who understands the power dynamics of these large companies and knows how to break into these accounts, you will not be able to get business. And if you don't get business, no matter how good your product is, it's going to fail, right? For a tech company, for instance, the CTO, right? For us, the retail, somebody who handles general trade, right? It's a skill set that we tried, like we ourselves tried to go to stores, convince the stores to, keep our product, etc. It was such a long journey. But, general trade is such a traditional business where if you get somebody who comes in from the industry, very quickly they're able to get you into these doors with distributors at market terms, and you don't have to spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel, right? Now that was what we needed early on when we were building distribution, and now that our brand relies very heavily on content marketing and social media, it's important for us to have somebody who really gets content. So I think these 2 investments we made very late because we were very stingy in terms of our both our equity, giving equity, and giving better salaries. So I think that's the one mistake a lot of early stage founders make. So identify 1 or 2 critical functions, get best in class people, give equity, give them like a good 15-20% stake, or at least a 5 to 10%, give them like at least a close to market salary to keep them excited about what you're building. And that will really accelerate your journey in the first 2 to 3 years. So yeah, so these are the 4 things I think that worked very well for us. And I like I said earlier, most of my personal investments are also in women founded companies. I feel that the one thing that women founders are great at is multitasking and doing quick decisions. And I do feel that that hence that is the future. And this whole 10,000 women entrepreneur programs is going to generate a lot of women entrepreneurs that I'm going to be very proud at. And that has a cascading effect because these women employ more women. They create their role models for more women who are founding companies. So I think as a, directionally, this is probably going to have the largest impact on the Indian economy. And so best of luck to all of you. Please build large businesses, be bold, be fearless, and build large companies. All the best. Very excited to have this opportunity to speak to all of you today as part of the NSRCL program.
Bravo. Thank you so much, Vineeta, for those wonderful words. I mean, your words were sweeter than sugar, pun intended, right? But I think 2 takeaways from what you spoke to us. Being a Bangalorean, I think not just as a woman, but as a human being, we've heard a lot of SAM policy, which is Salpa Adjust Mari. I think everyone has always told us to adjust to everybody else's idea, everybody else's thought process, right? So I think what was made very clear in your speech through experience is that you don't need to adjust to anybody else. You really need to contour and narrow down who you are and what exactly do you need. Invest in an idea that you are surely secure about, confident about, and are going to have fun over the next 2 decades or more nurturing and growing your business. That's one part of it. The second part of it is, if your idea is complicated, then stop right there. The whole point of enjoying what you do by being an entrepreneur is to keep it simple. So the KISS policy works better than the SAM policy.